How's it going with you? I'm Reza of Colwood Jewel Saints. Joining me at Return Shadows, John Phillip Bettencourt. Now, we are here to discuss the Barnabas Collins arc, but before we do, we lost the Dark Shadows cast member, Diana Malay, who played the Phoenix of Dark Shadows, or Dark Shadows, I should say. And so, before we get started, I'm going to give a moment of silence for her. All right, man. So let's do this. Barnabas Collins. What were your thoughts about, first of all, Willie Loomis coming into town with Jason McGuire? Because that's sort of where this starts.
It's a really good foil for a villain. So adding a new villain into something, because at the beginning of this, when Jason McGuire arrives, we all know that he's pretty much this. Can I say asshole? He's an asshole. He's basically an asshole. This guy is trying to ruin people's lives all around Collinwood and Collinsford, and he's the villain of the show at that point, in that storyline. And then when you bring in a second villain, which is Barnabas, essentially, it sort of throws this whole new tailspin, the story to another tailspin, which is exciting, different, and fresh. And then you find out what exactly this man is up to. Is he's this vampire? I mean, it's story upon story, it's layer upon layer. It's an amazing twist to an already really exciting story that was the Jason McGuire story.
Yeah, I agree with you. Jason's character, he's a con man, right? I mean, that's what I find most interesting. They've had many characters be shady, even Burke to a degree, but not quite like this. So here's this con man coming into town, and he knows Elizabeth's secret. He knows what, well, as he claims, what happened to Paul Stalker. That he's claiming Elizabeth killed him. And any great magic trick is about sleight of hand, and that's what I feel Jason's doing. It's everything is sleight of hand, and Liz is buying it hook, line, and sinker. And in a sense, why shouldn't she, right? I mean, what's your
Right,
thought?
she doesn't know any better.
Right. What that's what I was going to say. What's your thoughts on Liz buying Jason's shit?
Well, there's a lot going on with that because she doesn't know the truth. She only knows what she's been told. So she thinks that the whole fight that happened and the fire poker, the attack on Paul, she believes all that's true because she's been ingrained with it. She's been sort of told over and over again, yeah, Liz, you killed your husband. Liz, you killed your husband. You killed your husband. You killed your husband. You did it. I helped you bury him. I did it with you. You did it. So she's been sort of uh, uh, brainwashed in a sense to believe she did this. And I don't think she necessarily is upset that she actually took his life. I mean, there's obviously a part of that, but the biggest part is that she is hiding it from Carolyn. That is the biggest part. She knows that if Carolyn finds out that she killed her dad and that she lied about it and that he's been buried under the house this whole time, it'll destroy everything. It'll destroy her whole world. So there's a paranoia about it too, where she, there's a secret that she has, and it's literally around her neck. She carries a key around her neck to where Paul's supposedly buried. So it's this whole grift that Jason has over her secret that isn't really a secret. It's all pretend. so that he can continue to grift her and take money from her and weasel his way into her life. Little does he know, there's yet another buried secret in that family, and it's coming very soon, thanks to Willie.
Yeah, that's what I find. See, now for people who might get confused, who might say, well, wait, didn't Willie come looking for Barnabas? No. Or Willie, if it weren't for Jason McGuire coming back to Collinsport, we would have never heard of Willie Loomis. And I think that's a point that was beautifully made by our friend Mark Gilman. He made that point to me too, and I'm thinking, yeah, you're right. So shout out to him. He made that point really well too, that if it weren't for, if it weren't for Jason in the series, there is no Willie. Now in the movie that changes obviously in House of Dark Shadows, because Willie is already there. He's working for the Collins family, and there is no Jason McGuire. But I think that's the biggest difference where people might get it confused a bit. But if you watch the series, like we're trying to talk, and that's what we're talking about specifically, the series, is Jason is the reason Willie's there. So Willie starts at, looking at the portraits, and it's, what are your thoughts? It's David who ends up showing him Barnabas's portrait.
Well, it's perfect because David is sort of like the key to the family history in a way. He's always talking about the people of the past, and in further episodes he talks about the family book where, the family has their names and their birth dates and all that kind of stuff. So he knows all these little kind of hidden stories of the family. And so when he is sort of that little, like that entrance into what they don't really know is that there's somebody else somewhere else sleeping, waiting to be opened up. I want to go back to something you mentioned about Willie not really going to look for Barnabas, but you're right. Sometimes people watch from the beginning where they believe is the beginning, where it's the Barnabas episodes, and they have no further history that the show was actually before that. So you're right. You're totally right. It can get confusing about why Willie even went looking for Barnabas in the first place.
Right. I think the thing people need to remember is, and this is sort of a weird way to put this, just like there are apprentices in Star Wars, like the Jedi have apprentices, Willie is Jason's apprentice in many ways. Jason is sort of showing him how to be a con man.
Yeah, he's a henchman.
Right. I agree.
He does his bidding. He goes around town doing the bad stuff so that Jason doesn't have to get caught doing it.
Even though I think Willie's a bit of a sleazeball, and he's a bit, reckless, he's not stupid. Like he can read, he can write, and that's sort of how he starts researching about the Collins family. He starts looking in the Collins family history books.
Well, he's really looking to get away from Jason, isn't he? He's sort of like looking to get those jewels so they can grab them himself and get Jason out of his own life. They're all looking for it now. They're all looking for an escape from all the terrible things that are really behind in the shadows. They're their own personal demons. They're things that Willie, I'm sure, has in his life that Jason is holding over him, and that's why he works for him. So, but everybody's trying to look for an escape, and that's where it all kind of comes to a head. Is Willie's trying to get to those jewels? That's what he's looking for later on, and those jewels obviously bring money, which brings sort of a freedom for them to get away from everything else.
I like that. That's a very interesting take on that. I look at it like this a bit, that Willie himself, I think partially wanted to show up Jason too. Like, I can do it on my own. Like, and that's...
Well, you're right, yeah. Because he did do it on his own. He went behind his back. You're totally right.
Right. It's weird because, he's not... He doesn't, and what I'm trying to say is, I know I'm stammering, he doesn't know that Barnabas is in that mausoleum. He's just banking on the jewels being there, the money, and it sort of gets, they used the legend of Naomi Collins, the pirate legend. She got jewels from a pirate, and they buried it with her, and it's so legendary, it's so amazing, the legend itself. And that's what he's banking on. That's why he starts going to the mausoleum. And what I want to ask you is, what was your first impression of Jonathan Fritz's character Barnabas Collins when first seeing him?
That's a really good question. So when I mean, we've talked about this before. My first experience with Dark Shadows was with the replays or the reruns on Sci-Fi Network back in the '90s when I was like in junior high. So I didn't catch it in regular run. Like I didn't see it from the very beginning. It was literally by chance that I found it. So I started watching Dark Shadows, not knowing, seeing Jonathan Fritz as Barnabas, not knowing he was a vampire. I didn't know he was a vampire because they don't necessarily always say the word vampire. He doesn't necessarily always show his fangs in every episode, and you don't always see a coffin in every episode.
Right.
So a lot of times, I would watch and just think he was just this, a typical soap villain. This rich man who's trying to control everybody, and there's something weird about him. He lives in this kind of rundown mansion. So I didn't really connect the dots. I didn't know why the house would look the way it was, the old house. So I didn't know those things. I just was super interested in the look of the show, the drama. I knew that there was something creepy about it. There was, always, they'd walk around and there was fog all the time outside. Those typical things. The mood of the show was really what attracted me. Later on, did I find out he was a vampire and realize, oh my god, this show's amazing. I had no idea.
I like that, man. I like that.
Can you imagine watching a show, by chance and just like watching and all of a sudden, boom, his fangs pop out. And it was just like, wait, he's a vampire? It was amazing.
Right. When I first saw him, when he first walked through that door, I'm thinking, this son of a bitch is a vampire.
So you knew right away he was?
Well, again, I'm a horror nut, as you know. So by the time I watched Dark Shadows, I had seen every vampire film up until that point. So
you smelled it coming. You smelled the vampire coming around the corner.
Well, when I seen the hand coming out of the coffin, and you see the ring, and the ring's in the painting. It's like,
yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? That's either his identical twin, or he's a vampire. And I was
right, so I didn't see that episode. So when I started watching, I can't tell you which one it was, but the show was already in color. Julia was already involved.
Oh, wow.
I was way late, so I saw them totally out of order. So I'm just thinking it's a regular weird 60s soap opera with the guy who lives in a rundown. I had no idea until like much later, and then I realized, oh.
What do you make of his? And here's something too I want to ask you. He doesn't. This is something we don't get from him in the series, from the character. He doesn't react to what year it is. Like, it's 1967. They don't.
And his clothes, right? He shows up and he already has a suit.
Right.
So they kind of. This is your listeners will probably get on me about this, but they kind of talk about that in the movie, the 2012 movie, where they use the jewels reference for him to give to Willie to go buy him clothes, and he uses the jewels as his money. So we don't really get that from the show, I don't think. But you're right, they don't really reference, at least Barnabas doesn't reference the year, or he doesn't get surprised about what a telephone is or a car. He even drives a car at one point. So it's kind of like, it's weird. You really don't get the sense that he has this shock that he woke up in the 20th century.
Right, that's sort of what surprised me with the series. It's like, even like when you like you said, you didn't know he was a vampire, but once he realizes, like, okay, I'm in 1967, I ain't in 1795 anymore. There's no shock moment from him of, oh my god, I'm in the future. I think the closest they give, and it's not an exact, but when he's talking to Josette's portrait, I think that's sort of like the closest thing they give to it, but it's not like.
Do you remember what it is that he says to her?
Oh yeah, dude, I remember word for word, verbatim. He's standing at the old house, and this is in the episode when he first meets David, and David tells him prior that if you're a Collins, she would protect you. That Josette's ghost. And so when he's standing at the portrait by himself now, he's sort of confronting not just the portrait, but her ghost in a sense, even though she's not there physically. He says, I was a Collins. Where were you when I was turned into something even my own father loathed? And he goes on. So Fred sells this. He's not angry. He's hurt. He's not pissed. He's selling that he's hurt and he's upset that he was betrayed by Joshua. And later we find out what that meant. That Joshua didn't kill him. He wanted Joshua to kill him, not chain him up. Joshua couldn't do it. He couldn't bring himself to kill his own son. So when he's saying the chains which he bound me with are broken, tell his ghost I've come home. If his ghost is here through us, tell him I've come home. And that's sort of, in a weird way, it's a middle finger. It's a middle finger to not just Joshua, but secretly I think Angelique. Joshua, Josette, Angelique, the whole thing, the whole situation that he's been put in. It's, hey, I'm back. I'm here now. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just listening to you. Very, very good description. I remember that, but I don't remember it as well as you do. And that is very good, totally good description of that moment.
What are your thoughts on his confrontation with Josette's portrait a bit?
I would have to revisit the episode. I don't know it that well, but I do remember what you're saying about how he comes home and he does stare it up at the picture and talks to it for a bit. It's those are types of moments that Dark Shadows really does well. He has become a kind of this realization that he's in his own home. He's seeing the things that he knows that are his from centuries before. Now they're older. Now they're dusty. It's sort of this kind of gelling of the two worlds that he's lived in. This new world that he's at, and his old world, who he was and who he is now. So it's sort of this combination of everything sort of coming together, and he is now just kind of feeling what's happening to him. But without that kind of piece that we talked about a minute ago of him actually understanding the year, how long it's been, there is kind of a gap of his mentality.
Right. What did you think of his interaction with his family when he first meets Elizabeth, Roger, all of them?
Well, he definitely knows that he has to play a part. He definitely knows that he has to hide himself, his true self.
Right.
And he definitely knows that he can't at all be exposed because he has no idea what would happen. He has no idea of what this family would do to him if they knew his secret. And so he has to play the part of this guy from England who just happens to be the spitting image of the man in the portrait from a branch of the family that no one knew existed because it didn't exist. It was a lie. So he knows right from the beginning that he has to cover himself with layer, again, that Dark Shadows does this very well, layer upon layer of secrets and lies to create a veneer of somebody that they can love because they're family and not be afraid of. So he understands that what he is terrifying to people, and he's not sure how meeting Elizabeth or Roger and what kind of reaction they would have if they knew the secret, because the secret basically killed him in a sense by his father. He didn't die, but in a sense he might as well have been dead, so he doesn't want that to happen again. Right. His own father couldn't bear him.
Right. The secret, I think, what's laid out so well is this secret has haunted him and his family from the century he came from where he came from. And I think that's really well when he does the interaction with Josette's portrait. It's been haunting to him, and it's been hurtful. And I think that, look, Fred sold his ass off. Barnabas, and so I gotta ask you: is Barnabas Collins? Is he the greatest vampire ever?
I think yes. Simply yes. The other vampires, I don't know a whole lot of vampires in movies, but of course Dracula's the biggest one. Dracula has a lot of issues, but what I love about Barnabas is there's a humanity towards it, because we see who he was in the beginning, which when they take us back, we saw him beforehand. We saw him before he was the monster that he became. We saw that he loved. We saw that he was kind. We saw that he was loyal to his family. We get that kind of backstory of him. So that's what's really important and special about that show and that character, because you do get to know that person before he was a, because when he shows up, Barnabas is very dark. He's very evil. You are meant to be afraid of him. You don't know what he's going to do. You see him choke Willie. That's the first thing you see of him, is trying to kill somebody. And then he shows up to the house, and you're not sure what he's going to do to the next person he sees. And then the web of lies gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you just don't know. You have no idea what to expect from him. So, and then in time, you realize that he's just torn between himself and who he was and what he is, and you get to love him that way. And he sort of becomes an anti-hero, even though you're supposed to be afraid of him, you know. So it's just constantly back and forth. Is he good? Is he bad? Is he good? Is he bad? And that's really what's important and what's special about that character, that vampire. Other vampires are always evil from the beginning, unless you count the Count from Sesame Street. It's probably the only nicest vampire around. You know what I mean?
There was also the
evil from the beginning.
Yeah, there was also the vampire in Enrique's Castle. I don't know if you remember that show, but
no, I don't.
They had a vampire too, like a vampire bat, but that was friendly, obviously, because it was a kid show. But yeah,
just like the Count.
Right. You know, Sesame Street ripoff, if you want to say. But I agree with you. I do, in my opinion, Barnabas Collins is the vampire to end all vampires. I mean, every vampire after Barnabas was a Barnabas clone, in my opinion. I mean, even I'm not taking nothing away from Gary Oldman's performance in the movie Dracula, Bram Stoker's. But when you go watch that, there's elements of Barnabas in his performance. When he's a human, when he's dancing with the girl, I forget who played the actress, but the role, but he's dancing with her.
Winona Ryder, right?
Right. Yeah, thank you. When he's dancing with her, there's elements of Barnabas. He's charming her. He's not trying to kill her.
I could see that, but I also see that when Dracula's human in that moment, in my opinion, I think he is being dark and evil. I think he's trying to woo her and trying to kind of seduce her into becoming one of his brides. I think in a way that is still a villainous way of doing it. I guess you're right. I guess I can see what you're saying. You're right. There is an element of Barnabas, because Barnabas sort of does that when he sees Vicky and when he sees Maggie. So you're right. They do have a kind of a mirror image of each other in that sense.
Here's the thing: when he kidnaps Maggie, what are your thoughts on that? When him kidnapping Maggie because she's, the spitting image of Josette.
Pure villain. I mean, that is Barnabas at his evilest. No, probably not at his evilest, but pretty high up there. I mean, he just takes somebody from her life just because he thinks he can. I mean, that's pretty dark, pretty scoundrelous, So he eventually, again, like I said, there are layers and layers to Dark Shadows, is why I love the show. And eventually we see that it's just one of the things that sort of, it just takes control of him, and he does these impulsive things to people. And then he horribly hates himself for it. Then he goes back and he's just like, and he's running around the house, upset that he did it, but he felt like he had to do it. And so you begin to feel bad for him in a way, because he feels like he has to do these terrible things to people. But the brainwashing of her is really twisted. The constant hiding her away in the cage at the bottom of the house, first in the room and then at the bottom, and then when she tries to escape, he's super angry at her, and you get really scared of him. I mean, there are things about him that you're not sure you're supposed to trust, but he sort of does the same thing to you that he does to the people on the show. He tricks you into trusting him in a way and not knowing what he'll do next.
I'm going to say something. I don't think he would have ever killed her. I know he said about killing Maggie Evans because she wasn't accepting it. but I don't think he would have ever actually killed her because to him, no matter what, she did look like Josette. And if he
That would
was
have always been there, right?
right, he the portrait is telling too. Like when he talks to that portrait, it's just it's hurt, it's pain, and I think he's the only reason he kidnaps Maggie. It's what he knows. It's the last thing he remembered was Josette. You know, when he went in that coffin and got chained, he wasn't obviously right. He wasn't expecting to be chained up. He was expecting to be killed. So when he's released, he sees Maggie Evans. He meets her in the cafe. She looks like Josette. It's like, damn, I could have my bride again. You know. But
sort of a piece of his past comes back.
right.
Everything else is there. It's all there. The house is there. The items in the house are there, but they're all old and decrepit. And then he sees Maggie, who basically is Josette in his eyes, alive, well, and fresh, like as if she was real, the real Josette. It's enticing to him. It's almost like that is a piece of my past that I can actually, a tangible piece of my past that I can touch, feel, and it's still not, it's not dead and old like the rest of everything else.
I love how Willie Loomis has become literally less evil around, but he realizes how bad Barnabas really is, and he's literally like scared not just for himself but for everybody around him. He wants to scream it so bad, you know. John Carlin.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, John Carlin just was amazing. Him and Fred interacting with each other. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, he was an amazing actor, especially as Willie. But you're right, Willie sees himself as the last barrier between between, anybody getting close to Barnabas and eventually finding out the secret and then Barnabas killing them. So in a way, he feels as though he has to protect everybody to keep them away from Barnabas as best he can. He knows the danger. He knows how bad things can really get.
Yeah, what was your thoughts on the ghost of Sarah Collins?
It was a really good way to show Barnabas' humanity, because in the beginning, as I've said, he's super, dark, and he's just this thirsty vampire trying to get his fiance back, and he's just constantly doing that. That's his MO, is just getting back to where he was before he was locked up. So Sarah's ghost is sort of a reminder that he was human once. She's that key. She's that little piece of something that, in a way, like Josette, reminds him that there was once a before. There was a before this. There's a before the curse. And unlike Josette, she unleashes in him a different type of kindness, because Josette is more, passion, love. It's a different kind of love with Sarah. It's a more of a genuine and protective love that he has for Sarah, because she's his little sister. And so it's a great way to put him into two different buckets. There's the passionate side of him that is obsessed with Josette, and then there's the concerned big brother side of him for Sarah. And so it's a good way to kind of tie it all together and remind him that he was human once.
I think it was a perfect way for them to receipt Barnabas in a way. I mean, no one had dared challenge him to that point. Here's this little girl who's innocent as can be, and she's a ghost. And the way they introduce her isn't the way they introduced Josette's ghost. She's, singing London Bridge, tossing a ball, and Maggie sees her. It's eerie, creepy, and just beautifully done. It's something I haven't seen since from a ghost standpoint. When you think of a ghost, you think of a white sheet, right? Well, not with Dark Shadows. They showed a person in their human form being a ghost, like a body. A person with a voice, with a body. I loved it. I loved what Sharon Lynch did, because it was, I agree with you, she She literally was doing everything to get at him, to antagonize him, to remind him, "You're my brother. What happened? Like, why? What changed? A curse did not change who you were. You changed who
Right.
you were." And it's so well done.
She's that key to his, like I was saying, a key to his humanity, a key to who he was before the darkness crept into his life.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on Barnabas? Now, I know he only ever has one interaction with Ryan Mitchell, Jonathan Fred, but the next time we see him with Burke, he's interacting with Anthony George, and they're basically going back and forth with each other, and they have this costume party of everybody dressing in the period of 1795. Vicky's dressing as Josette. What were your thoughts on this?
Well, Burke is naturally very threatened by Barnabas and vice versa because they're both, trying to get at Vicky. So there's a suspicious eye constantly on Barnabas but for a very innocent reason in a way, because he thinks Barnabas is strange, but not in the way that we all know he's strange. We all know why Barnabas is strange. Burke sees him as more of he's a little kind of off because he's very proper. He's not that kind of guy. He's not like Burke, So he sees Barnabas as kind of a rival of his for Vicky. And in a way, we're kind of, as a viewer, you're kind of sitting there going, you have no idea where you're getting into, Burke. There's something way darker on the other side of that. And that's the really fun element of it, is that the tension is, why you should be afraid of Barnabas. You, me, the viewer, but Burke doesn't. Burke just thinks, oh, well, this guy's trying to get at this lady that I like, and, I don't know if I like that, but we know that it's a lot more dangerous than anybody in that whole room even understands.
Yeah, I think the interaction is really good. Like, I love Anthony George's portrayal of Burke. It's not Ryan Mitchell's exactly, but it's sort of his own feel of it. And I don't think
he more sensitive.
Right. He didn't do a bad job. I just think he gets heat for Ryan Mitchell not being Burke Devlin, which is weird. But what were your thoughts on them? Here's, Dr. Hoffman, which is mentioned as a man, but thank God they change it to a woman, and we get Grayson Hall, and here's Dr. Julia Hoffman. She literally is going to be the second person to sort of challenge Barnabas in so many ways. What were your thoughts on her and just everything?
Well, think of the year that she comes in. She is, first of all, the idea that the character is supposed to be male and they flipped it to female is, I don't even think that's ever been done on daytime in that time. If you think about her position as a doctor and who she was, at Wyncliffe, and that position, so, 1968? Is that when she started?
Well, 60, I think it was 67.
67, okay, so 60, she's in there in 67. There are not very many women that I can think of that are doctors that high level, meaning she's in control of an entire, medical facility. And it's in a year that women didn't have that type of role in work at all, in real life. Very, very few. So we have a male character that changes to female, which is really a big deal. And then to have this powerhouse woman who is an amazing actress. She is talented. She's very well trained to be on a daytime soap, to play in a series about a vampire and all these other dark creatures. To have those performances with her and Jonathan Frid is really, really, it's exciting to watch. It's fun to watch, and it's a privilege to see it, because you don't see that anymore in shows like this.
No, you don't.
And she was a really great actress. She's one of my favorite characters. Maybe I'm gushing over her because I love her so much, the character so much, but I really like the whole idea of her. The whole idea of Julia Hoffman is just an amazing, really, really great idea for a female to be that powerful in a storyline like that back in those days is big.
There's nothing wrong with character obsession, my friend. But
Totally obsessed with Julia.
what were your thoughts on when she comes in? I like how, to me, Grayson Hall's character, Dr. Hoffman, in every way inspired Dan Curtis's creation of Carl Kolchak, of the Night Stalker, of this reporter who investigates the supernatural. Because in many ways, that's what Julia was doing. Not on purpose, mind you.
Right.
But
by total accident.
Right. She goes into the old house. She sneaks in through the window. She goes down into the basement where everybody else who's been down in there has been deader than a doornail or come close to it. But she just goes down there with no fear and she sees the coffin. And then the confrontation between her and Fred is amazing. What were your thoughts on that?
She knows she has the upper hand. She's terrified. First of all, there is a little fear to her. She doesn't know what the heck's going to happen. But she knows that nothing can happen because she has the upper hand. She knows his secret. And if she dies, the secret will be exposed because people will come looking for it. Things will happen. There will be a chain reaction to her death. She can't just go missing.
Right.
And so she, in a way, she manipulates Barnabas into keeping her alive, and she manipulates him in a way that is so smart. She tries to tell him basically, you need me. If you kill me, you will also die. And it's, poor Barnabas is stuck between a rock and a hard place. He knows that she's right. He knows that if she dies, people will come snooping around and figure out what happened, and then something will happen to him. But Julia also puts herself in a different position where, by doing this, by tricking Barnabas with that type of manipulation, she now sets herself up to do something that she might really want to do. She tells him that maybe she can help him, maybe she can get him out of whatever is going on in his life. And it's exciting for her because she is a scientist, and something new and fresh is coming into her life, her work that she's never seen before. And to get her to a point where she can figure out how to cure somebody is probably the most exciting, exhilarating thing in her whole world, because as a scientist, you live for those things. You live to cure and to figure out and to put those type of medical puzzles back together and take them apart and put it back together again. And I'm sure that was a huge, big piece of why she was so obsessed with Barnabas, not only because she was probably in love with him, but because of that factor.
I agree. I like the fact that she does try to help him in every way. Yeah. I mean, she covers for him, and really the reason her experiment doesn't work is because of him. He rushes it. Now it's different in House of Dark Shadows. She does betray him, but with the series, no, he rushes it, and that's why it fails. And when he murders, the other doctor, Dr. Woodard, that's where Julia is sort of torn between, God, he murdered my friend. He murdered my friend. And how far...
She knows how dangerous he is.
Right.
But she's never seen it until... I mean, he's kind of roughed her up a little bit, let's be honest. He grabs her a bunch of times. Right. But she's never really seen how dark he can go. And so when that happens, it is clear to her that she does not want to mess up anything. She does not... whatever she's planning on her own, she has to be very careful because he is very dangerous.
In many ways, Dr. Woodard's death is the start towards 1795. Because if he wouldn't have died, obviously Barnabas is going to get exposed and killed. So when he dies, and, here's Carolyn, she gets bit. Real quick, what were your thoughts on Carolyn getting bit in the series?
Well, honestly, it's a little weird because there's almost like this weird sexual tension between them.
Right.
And I'm not sure they were meant to do that. I guarantee they didn't mean to do that because in a way they are family. Very, 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 very distant, but it is still strange because he's more like her uncle in a sense, not Roger, but a different uncle. So it is weird, but there is a very strong sexual tension between them, especially when she goes over to his house in the middle of the night and he's like, going at her neck again. It's very strange. But, I mean, he has to do what he has to do. I mean, he's a vampire. That's the way he controls people. And that's how the only way he can see himself, the only way he can see his way out of that predicament was to do what he did to Carolyn. And, it worked for a while. So, but it is a little weird to kind of see the way they interact with each other at first.
When you watch House of Dark Shadows, it gets even weirder. But you think that was tense there? Wait till you watch House of Dark Shadows.
I can't watch it. Carolyn is also one of my. I think I have a thing about really strong women. Carolyn, Nancy Barrett is so powerful in her performance. She's like a spitfire, right. And I just love it. So I think she's my other favorite character. And so I don't know if I can handle it.
I'm not going to spoil it for you, but trust me, it gets pretty crazy. But so what are your thoughts on them taking Alexander Isles, Victoria winners, back to 1795, and it's not Vicky who directly learns about, it's more they're taking Vicky back so the audience can see how shit went down.
Well, it's such a smart way to do it, because you think about it, they could have just had Barnabas sort of do a flashback, like a memory, and maybe they flash back to it. They've done it in different shows. It's always sort of like a character begins speaking of something that happened in the past, and then they cut to it, and it's just happening in front of you. So the way having Vicky go, it's almost like putting you there. It's almost like taking you, the viewer, with her. Instead of you just seeing it from Barnabas' point of view, you're seeing it through Vicky's point of view, which in a way is your point of view, because she's new to it just as you are. And so that's such an interesting and kind of smart way to do it, is taking someone from the outside in so that they can experience everything for the first time and not see it through Barnabas' eyes, who would be experiencing it again for the second time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And the way you painted that picture is exactly right. I agree with you 1000%. Vicky's time, and I've said this in the video too, Vicky's time travel isn't for her to find out anything about Barnabas. It's for the audience to find out what happened. You're just...
Right, in an inventive way. It's
right.
Very smart.
You're in every way. Yeah, you start off hearing things and seeing things through Vicky, but really you're hearing the story through the people who lived it, through Barnabas, Angelique, Sarah, Joshua, Naomi, even Nathan. Everybody who was there, you're sort of hearing it from them.
Right, and it's done in a way like I said, in a way that's so smart, because it's not really, oh, this is Barnabas' memories. She's literally living it. Vicky's living it too. She's there too. She's a part of those stories now because she's physically there. So she's now changing history, right? Because like you and I spoke about, a lot of times when you time travel, you're not seeing history anymore. You're actually creating it because you're changing the timeline. And so Vicky is now involved and intertwined in this story that is now also Barnabas' story. It's very smart. It's such a smart thing. I loved it.
Right, Vicky is the reason Daniel gets saved, Daniel Collins, who's played by David Hensey. So, yeah, she does change the one thing that could have forever killed off the Collins family. That they wouldn't have had their 1967 family. But I agree with you. It's so well done and so beautifully written and just so well shot. Everything about that arc is perfect and beautiful. It's
and
dark.
Imagine how expensive it could have been, in a show in the 1960s, especially a show like that. They didn't have a big budget, and they could only have like 5 to 6 characters at a time because of the budget. And they had to completely redo their sets because they're not going to use the same furniture from 1960s. They changed all of the sets. From the furniture, the portraits, everything. They added new sets. They created a jail. They created different rooms, different bedrooms. I mean, it's a lot to do. It It's just a lot. No show was doing what they were doing, and I don't think any show ever has done what they've done ever since with bigger budgets.
No, Dan Curtis knew what the hell he was doing, and so did the people involved. They just, you know, I'm probably gonna mispronounce his name, Cy Tomanoff. I'm probably butchered his last name. I apologize, but he did the sets too, and they were just. I agree with you. They're all amazing, especially during that arc, because, like you said, they changed everything, the furniture, everything. They couldn't have Barnabas's right. They couldn't have the Barnabas portrait up yet. It wasn't ready.
Right.
And I love how we get the Josette portrait in 1795. I love how they revealed that.
Yeah, it's just a really well thought out idea, and I think in those days again, I marvel at how they put all this together in the way that they did with the money that they did, because they didn't have a lot of time to really say, okay, this is we need all this new furniture, we need all new paint job. Like, it just happened so quickly within maybe weeks of them writing the new scripts and saying, okay, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we have this whole new storyline where Vicky's going back to the past and we need everything redone. And it's just like boom, 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 it happens, and we never knew. Like, it just, from one day to the next, she's in the past and all new sets. It's great.
So we find out Barnabas is cursed by this lovely, beautiful, smoking hot blonde named Angelique. What were your thoughts on Angelique, man?
Well, initially, again, when I first started watching it, I had no idea how he became a vampire. I don't think I got to that storyline until I started doing research way later. It is such I don't even know how to say it. It is a fresh idea to have a witch curse you to become a vampire.
Right.
Because a lot of times we don't really know how vampires became vampires. Sometimes, but not always. Just the stories are very shady about how somebody became a vampire. A lot of times it's like with Dracula, they'll say he was a monster and he was just drinking blood, whatever the story is. But having everything that has horribly gone wrong in Barnabas' life is because of a witch is such a fun way to enter into a new phase of storytelling with supernatural characters, because then okay, they've had this phoenix come in, they've had a ghost, they have this vampire, now there's this witch. What else is coming? Once they enter a witch in, there's no telling where the story can go. And that's really kind of like the next step into more and more and more of these fun, creative, supernatural characters that just get better and better.
Right. A witch was a hell of an idea. I mean, prior to Barnabas, I agree with you. We don't know why, Dracula's history of becoming a vampire. We didn't know this one or that one. But we did find out about Barnabas's. And I think that's another thing that just made him so different.
And unique, you're right. Exactly.
Right. It just, here's Laura Parker who's playing this witch. And I agree with something you said, 1,000%. She was so ahead of her time that when I watch The Craft, they're mini Angeliques, all of them. But she just, I don't know, she just knew how to take over a scene, command the screen, whether she was speaking or not. Before she ever said one word, she could sell you with her eyes, her face, her body language. Everything screamed. And it was beautiful. And then that curse sequence, I mean, we've both shared videos of that. I mean, it's amazing. He shoots her and she just curses him, and it's like, oh shit.
it's a landmark scene of the whole series, because you can go back through the series and pick pivotal moments, and it's a weird way of doing it, because not only has the show been on for 2 years already, and this is also a prequel part of the prequel storyline telling you the story of somebody already in the show, but it's still a huge piece of the show, because it's something that is telling you where it began 2 years in. You know what I mean? That is a great way to continue a story further.
Right.
Is by showing you the past, and it's just so well done. And of course, it doesn't help that she is just gorgeous. She steals focus just by walking past the camera. She doesn't have to do, like you said, she doesn't have to do much. She just those big eyes that beam open, and you just know she is a bad girl. She is a bad girl.
Right. She just she seduces you. I mean, really, without even saying anything, and
Perfect. I mean,
you're
yes, she really does.
she just in every way. It's like, man, she looks beautiful and nice, but then she starts doing stuff. It's like, oh no, oh shit. But yeah, I think it was amazing, and we know Vicky gets framed for witchcraft, obviously. But once Vicky comes back from 1795, and what are your thoughts on here's Jonathan Frid? He's now panicked as hell.
Well, it's again, like I would say, it's yet another layer of something really, really scary in his life. He now has no idea what she's going to do with this information. He has to figure out a way to sort of get out of a bad situation before it even happens, because it's ammunition, it's something she has on him, and he can only think of very, very dark things to do to her to keep the secret. And of course, it just, it spirals from there. Everything that happens to him sort of snowballs into something worse. And that's because, as a lie is covered up by another lie, is covered up by another lie, is covered up by another lie. And he's only really looking out for the secret being covered up forever. And that means keeping everybody that's new in his life away from the truth. And he really can't do that anymore with Vicky, because there's no way that she can, not know what she knows.
I think it's interesting. Like them by the time they bring her back, I think and here's something I jumped over and I apologize for it, and I wanted to ask you what are your by the end of the 1795 arc, how did you feel about the character of Barnabas at that point?
Well, this was a perfect way for the audience to start feeling more sympathy for him, because all we knew was that he was this monster. He was a vampire. He wanted to kill people, and he was obsessed with he was obsessed with the hometown girl Maggie, that kind of thing. So we only felt nervous around him. We only felt kind of like unsure of why we wanted to like him. We knew there was a reason why we wanted to like him, but we didn't really know.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they did on the shows where they said, we are going to show you why, and they show us that he's just this poor guy who's been cursed, and his secret isn't really his fault. None of it is his fault. He's just doing the best he can being a vampire. This is how it all panned out. And so this was their way, literally, this was their way of changing Barnabas from the villain to now the hero, because they needed to. They needed to shift audiences away, because remember, Barnabas wasn't supposed to stay around. They were going to kill him.
Right.
So they had to figure out a way to keep him and make the audience like him. And this was genius. They had to show us that it wasn't his fault. He's not a bad guy, and he's doing anything he can to really just stay alive and not kill anybody else if he doesn't have to. So bringing her back and keeping Barnabas around now that somebody else has a secret, or somebody else knows a secret, is A, keeps Barnabas, and B, gives him more storyline for the future. And we're more sympathetic towards him. Now we know why he does bad things.
I like the fact that I agree with you. Once they bring her back, I'm thinking, man, I feel really bad for Barnabas and what happened to him. But when they bring her back and you see the fear on his face, it's beautiful. It's like because
it almost looks real.
Right.
You almost feel like Jonathan's like, oh shit, I am actually scared that she knows too much.
Right. Frid sells it so well. He doesn't know what she knows, and he needs to find out what she does know, and he's willing to do just about anything to find out. What are you?
I feel like he knows she knows, but he doesn't know how much.
Right.
Like he knows that she's now kind of like but he doesn't know. Okay, what is it that she knows?
Right. What What were your thoughts on the introduction of Dr. Eric Lang?
That's a really good question. So Doctor, he doesn't stick around too long. I
No.
think he's sort of there to give Julia a run for her money, to basically give Julia something to do, something to fight over, because he's another doctor, and Barnabas is there, and he sort of discovers the secret too, and now Julia's sort of trying to, scramble around and cover for Barnabas, even though this other doctor kind of knows, and there's always, there's a tension between the two doctors. But we know that Dr. Lang seems really good at first, but that there's just something bad under his belly. There's something, the other shoe is going to drop, and then we find out, later on what happens.
Yeah, he's digging up dead bodies and putting them together, right? He's basically doing the Frankenstein bit, Frankenstein's monster, which I thought was really, really interesting. It's like, wow, they're holy shit, they're digging up dead bodies. But
and I always felt the thing about Adam, like, tell me if I'm wrong, like they never really found a secure love interest for Carolyn, right? Everybody the guys kind of came and went very quickly, and I never understood that. And I think Adam was supposed to be her love interest, and then he went away. You know what I mean? The story arcs didn't stay very long. I wondered why that was. Not to go off of Barnabas, but that's kind of another topic maybe we should talk about.
No, I'll sort of chime in on that here while we're doing this, because it's sort of a part of it in a way, because Adam is taking Barnabas's affliction away from him, right? So I'm going to be honest with you. I know she married Jeb Hawks, and I'm not taking that away. You know how there's some people that aren't meant to have somebody in their life? That's what I felt about Carolyn. Do
you think there was a reason why she couldn't? Like, was that part of her curse? Like, I always believed that each family member had their own piece of the curse in their bodies, like in their system. Do you think that was part of her curse? That there was just to be no way she can ever be in love happily?
Well, I'll give your story. I'm going to use your story as an example, okay? And you did this very well, and I've told you this. Carolyn has many interests in your story, but she keeps losing lovers. Well, why is that?
Yeah.
Because there's just something about her life that she can't have somebody in it. I'm not meaning like a daughter or a son, but a lover, like an actual person who she can make love to and just talk to. I mean, she comes close, even in your story. And even in, Dark Shadows, the series we're talking about, she comes close, but it never lasts.
Never lasts. And the one that lasted the longest in real story, not my story, but in the show, was Jeb. And even that ended terribly.
Right. But
anyway, back to Barnabas. Let's go back to. I was just thinking that we mentioned Adam, and I thought, that's something I've always wondered about that.
It's a good one though when you think about it, right?
I honestly wish they had kept Adam longer. I thought he was a great character. Again, I keep diverting from Barnabas, but I just feel like Adam was a great character. They could have kept him around longer. Anyway.
Well, think about it. You look at it this way: Robert Rodan, Adam, Chris Jennings, Quentin. There are characters out there in the Dark Shadows lore that they could bring the series back with, and that's
Quentin,
right
for sure.
That's definitely something they could do. They just, again, Dan Curtis's daughters have to do what their dad did, take a chance, and I think that's the biggest takeaway. But back to Barnabas.
Yes, back to Barnabas. Barnabas was their idea, the daughter's idea. They brought it up to him. He was wondering how he could revamp the show and make it more appealing. I'm not sure which daughter, but one of them said, make him a vampire.
Right.
Or make him a monster. I'm not sure of the quote, but it was something like that. Make him a monster, make him a vampire. So they're the ones, they are the ones that brought that idea up. So they do need to take a chance.
I think let me ask you this, do you think Julia Hoffman was in love with Barnabas?
Totally, 100%.
I did too.
So much so that I married them in my story. They had 2 children.
I know. That's what I'm thinking. You can tell John's watched the series.
I wanted them to be together so bad that I invented a daughter that they adopted so that they could have somebody together, like so that somebody they raised in my story lasted. You know what I mean? Became part of the show. Well, not the show, but the story.
Now, do you think he loved her back?
I think he. Do I think he loved her back? Wow. No. Yes and no. No, we never saw him fall in love with her. Yes, I think at the end, if they had pursued it the way Sam Hall wanted to, yes. Because, and Sam's, that legendary TV Guide interview that he gave, and gave like a synopsis of what would happen to all the characters, he says they would run off together to Singapore, which I wrote about. So yes, I think eventually he would have fallen in love with her. He would have seen how much she cared for him. But we never saw that. It was never. He cared for her like a friend, like a best friend, and throughout the entire show, she was head over heels in love with him.
Right. I think he had a lot of admiration for her, and I think over time, that admiration would have grown and grown and grown and grown and continued to grow, because here's somebody who literally went out of her way to help him in every way. I mean, it doesn't get much more I'm sticking by your side than that.
Yeah, she could have exposed him.
Right.
I mean, and that would have been it. That would have been done.
Right.
She didn't.
Yep, I agree. What are your thoughts on, here's Vicky, she buys a portrait of Angelique, and when Barnabas sees it, it's a beautiful reaction, right?
Yeah, he's like, oh, hell no, like, this is not happening again. It's a way for him to just be like, shit, I can't have nothing. Like, everything is always crazy around my life. And it's a tough pill for him to swallow because he doesn't know what's coming next.
I love the whole the phases of Angelique, like with Barnabas, because she doesn't admit it to him. She's like, "Oh no, I'm not this. Why do you keep calling me this Angelique girl?"
Yeah. Yep.
But he's not fooled. I mean, he's not buying it one inch. But here's what I want to ask you though: Julia and Dr. Lane both believed in a vampire. I mean, they believed Barnabas was a vampire. Julia found out, and Lane found out. So they believed in it. But when he's telling their asses about Angelique, they don't believe in the witch. So what's up with that?
Well, I think that's a very good plot hole. I didn't even think of that. That they're able to believe in a vampire but not a witch. That's a very strange plot hole, right? Well, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they don't believe that there's anything, like witches because they've never seen it for themselves. They were able to see Barnabas in his element as a vampire, essentially. So you have to see to believe, that type of thing. I mean, these people are scientists. So maybe, a vampire or someone who's afflicted by vampirism is more believable to them because it's more of an affliction, it's something in their body, I guess you could think of that, because they always talk about the blood disease. They push it to it as being a disease. Like he has some kind of disease that's making him that way. So for them, seeing it through a scientist's eyes, they think, oh, well, he is the way he is because he's sick. So they always treat him as if he's sick. They don't really treat it as if he is cursed and they need to go to some other witch doctor to pull the curse out of him, So they treated it as like a medical issue, as opposed to Angelique, who they don't know, they don't believe in, they've never seen her, they can't, what's the proof, that type of thing. They need to see it to believe it.
Yeah, I get that. I do, I get that aspect of it, seeing is believing. But my thing with them is, I just think they're skeptical. I think, here's the thing too, here's what I'll weigh into this. I'm thinking about the Salem witch trials. And when they hear the word witch, it's like, come on, witch. They don't say it, but that's sort of how, they're acting. It's like, witch, dude, get out of here. There ain't no witch. But I think that they just don't really believe in it. It's just something that's so even more supernatural than what he is or what he
Right.
was. So it's just so hard to believe. And I do think you're right. They needed to see it. And once I think what woke Julia up was Eric Lane's death, really, and the dream curse. That
Yeah,
really, I
the dream
think,
curse for sure.
woke Julia up like, okay, this bitch is for real. But so, and that slap, man, it was amazing. Grayson Hall, Julia Hoffman slapping Angelique.
Oh my god, it was probably one of the soapiest moments of Dark Shadows. Dark Shadows was different from every other daytime soap on TV, but that moment was like perfectly soapy, slap across the face, like so dramatic, so melodramatic, everything. It was just perfect.
Right.
Because everybody's been wanting to do it. You know, everybody's been wanting to actually that villain to get a slap in the face or something. And finally, Julia's the person to do it. It's amazing.
Right? No, there was no one better to do it either.
Yeah. Although I would have liked Vicky to slap her too. Vicky, she put Vicky in a lot of hell.
Right. I do think. Here's the thing. To me, Vicky's best confrontational moments. She does confront her verbally. You want to look at Vicky's best confrontation. It's in the Phoenix arc, which is,
Yes,
but
it is.
those
are good scenes.
Right. She's the heroine of that, really. Her and Josette's Ghost. So Carolyn too, to a degree, but to me more Vicky. But to stay on topic, because I have trouble doing it, what were your thoughts on? We get Nicholas Blair, who's the warlock, and here's Barnabas. Sort of half recognizes him, like, "Hey, you ever been in Martinique?"
I think, sometimes there are too many characters in a way that start to muddle up a storyline. Actually, I really like Nicholas, but sometimes there can be a little bit too many people involved. I think they could have stuck to just Angelique and have that continue to be a thorn in Barnabas' side. But in a way, Nicholas comes in and is now Angelique's thorn in her side. So it's kind of perfect in a way, too.
Right. What were your? I know I'm going to jump here a bit. What was your thoughts on Barnabas? Now he wills himself back in time to save Vicky. He literally is standing by where her grave will be or is, and he just wills himself back to, I guess, 1795 or 1796, and saves her.
In a way, maybe Vicky is the one person that Barnabas sees as she's sort of like, in a way, a mirror image of India. Remember how I kind of merged India with Vicky?
Yep.
I kind of take that example from his relationship with Vicky, because I think he sees the purity in her. I think he sees the beauty in her, aside from how beautiful the actress actually is. There's a beauty of Vicky inside. She sees kindness in people. She sees the good in people. And I think Barnabas does this as a way to, I think aside from, what he feels for Julia, which we don't really know, like we talked about, I think he really does love Vicky. Vicky is the one that he is in love with.
Right.
And I think that is the way he does it. He just wants to protect her, and he wants to love her. He wants to be with her. And I think that's why he does it.
When he gets back, there's a lot of stuff going on. You have the ghost of Quentin, apparently. And this is all going to lead back to 1897, and he's going to have to go, once again, become a vampire. What were your thoughts on the beginning of that arc with him?
Well, it's sort of them trying to. Barnabas is famous for being a vampire, and when he becomes human, I think the story for a lot of people, the big fans, again at the time, probably got a little. Maybe people were more disappointed and weren't so excited that he wasn't a vampire anymore, and so this was a way for them to kind of make him exciting again. and I like that because it gives us more time to see what happens to Barnabas. It gives us more friction, more drama to see. He's finally happy, he's finally healed, and now he has to go backwards and make himself a vampire again, or become a vampire again. And it's just something that causes more drama and more storyline. And we have to, poor guy, we've loved him for all this time, and we finally see sort of the end of that curse for him, and now he has to go backwards and become a vampire again to go back in time.
Yeah, I think the 1897 arc, him going back and making the choice to go back too to save the kids, I think that's one of his biggest babyface moments. Like, it really, I get like Vicky's a big deal, like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, he loves Vicky, but here's these kids, they're dying. I mean, he literally, I gotta do something. And, well, you have to go back and be a vampire and not just run the risk of getting caught, but run the risk of getting destroyed. And
right.
it's one of the biggest risk moves of the character of what are they going to do with him? I mean, he's back in now 1897, and you have Quentin, who's not quite an antagonist, but you're not sure what to make of him. He's charming and witty, but yet he can be very cruel at times. And what were your thoughts on the introduction of Count Andreas Patofe?
I don't really remember much of him, to be honest with you. I mean, I've been in and out through the series, so I don't have a lot of really good memories of the Count, to be honest.
I'll give you my my interpretation. Count Patofe's hand, to me, is the equivalent of Dark Shadow's Infinity Gauntlet. That hand can do anything to anyone. And here's this guy who knows how to wield it. And it's his own hand. And that's fucked up. And the gypsies are involved with having this hand, and Magna gets it, steals it. They're pissed she steals it. Now Patofe has it back, and he's going to wreak all sorts of hell on everybody. But I think the Barnabas barely getting away from Patofe toward the end and finally being sort of rid of him to a degree, I think it was just, holy shit, that was one hell of a heel they had. I mean, I'll give you my opinion. I don't think Patofe is dead. I think because even with him, if he is, his hand can't die. That thing is out there. It's like sort of like the thing from Adam's Family. That hand is out there somewhere causing some sort of shit.
Aladdin's lamp is somewhere. It goes away. It's discovered. Chaos ensues when someone finds it, then it goes away again. It just comes back to haunt people.
Right. That's beautiful. I like that. But yeah, I think it's really amazing, and this sort of leads us into the Leviathan arc. Here's Barnabas trying to come back from. He goes back to 1795 again to meet Josette. This time he's intervened by these creatures who are now going to have him join, sort of be the third man. I sort of equated the Leviathans to the NWO. But what are your thoughts on the Leviathan people and Barnabas?
It's one of the storylines that a lot of people don't really like. A lot of the fans don't like it. From the things that I've read, I actually kind of like it. I like the idea of this kind of cult. They're like a cult in my eyes. There's like this cult that are a driving force behind all these dark and evil things in the background, and they pull together to cause chaos everywhere they go. I really liked it. Barnabas, of course, getting pulled in is an added danger.
Yeah, I think I'm going to sort of repeat what I said in the video I did. To me, Barnabas Collins at this point is the equivalent of Hulk Hogan. He's not. He doesn't have the bulgy muscles, mind you, but he's as big as Hogan became, for his time at least. He's popular with the fans. Jonathan Fred is. He's popular with the ladies. He he's so well beloved. He's an icon in every way, and now they're going to turn him heel. And I think it's one of the a real
Or back
bold
to heel, right? Because
right
man, he is.
right back to heel, and that's funny. That's exactly how Hulk Hogan started, a heel. Then he became the biggest baby face the business ever knew. Then he became the biggest heel the baby the business ever knew. So it's in every way it mirrors Barnabas. So it's a weird comparison to make, but it's there. And the Leviathan people were strange. Can I let me ask you this: do you feel, because Angelique described them as serpent-like creatures? Do you feel they could have got away with using like trained pythons and doing voiceovers with the pythons?
I don't know. I don't really know. Maybe, maybe they could have, but how many pythons? You know what I mean? It'd be a wild day with a lot of pythons.
I know it sounds weird, but that's sort of the best way. Like I felt they could have showed them off, because training a python is, look, wrestlers did it, the circus does it. It's so, to me, Dark Shadows could have got away with it and did it like right. But I mean, I guess the voiceover thing would have looked cheesy with a snake. You know what I mean?
They
So
could have. I mean, it could have worked with a voiceover, but we have to remember, like, um, budgets and all that. But saying on that, to go to your point, they could have done it with pythons, and done something with the special effects and had one real python, but multiply them so it looked like three.
yeah. So let's get to the end of this sort of arc. Now we know the parallel time stuff. So let's get to the end of where Barnabas is coming back from 1840. He saves the day. Where do you think Barnabas Collins is today, or went? We'll say.
That's a really hard question. If we go again by Sam Hall's little outline that he did for TV Guide, he's somewhere in Singapore. Who knows? Alone, maybe found another mate, maybe made her a vampire, maybe he's not a vampire. I mean, maybe he's a vampire, maybe he made her a vampire. Maybe they're both human. Who knows if he's even still alive? I mean, for that matter, he went to Singapore with Julia. She made him human again. So technically, he probably wouldn't be alive, right? If he became human, he would have been over 100. So I like to think that he didn't become human. I like to think he something went wrong. Like in my story, something always goes wrong with him. He's always trying to get out of something, and he goes back and forth. And he's human again. He's not. So I like to keep him as a vampire, because then you can use him again. He can come into stories and he can still be out there. Nobody in my story, nobody knows where he is. And so I think that's kind of a good way to keep him. Nobody knows where he is. Nobody knows when he's going to come back. Nobody knows how he's going to come back. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? It's always kind of the mystery and kind of the scare tactic is whatever generation you begin the show from. Again, if they were to do it again, or if you and I were to write more, the fun part is there's always that link. There's that thread of the character of Barnabas Collins that's always in the back of everybody's mind. Where is he? Is he good? Is he bad? How is he going to come back?
I think he's out there in a different way. I think he is dead, but I think the blood samples Dr. Hoffman took when he was a vampire are with whoever she left them with. And they know.
Good. That is very good. Oh man, I wish I thought of that.
And they know exactly where his ass is buried. And one day they're going to take that blood and pour it on his mouth, and he's going to be a vampire again.
What if they cloned him? What if they got Julia's vials and created a new Barnabas?
Oh,
so
shit.
he doesn't. He looks younger. He's himself, but younger, and a vampire. So he's not. Jonathan Frank was in his 40s. Yeah, I think about 43 or 44 in the beginning.
Hey,
so what if he was like this 20-year-old guy?
Hey, John, I think I hear the start of your next DS blog, dog. I really do, because the way you create stuff, man, that's sick and twisted and awesome at the same time.
I thought you created it. I just got your idea. That's what I thought you were going at.
No, to me, I do think he's out there. Whether he's alive or dead, no one knows. And I think no matter which way you play it, both work. You know what I mean? It's the character has so much intrigue around him. It's amazing. And that's something I'll always take away from Barnabas. What say you?
I agree. I mean, I'm stunned by just realizing that, yes, you're right. I could probably do a 14 now with this idea. So, edit that out of your video so no one can hear it. No, I'm just kidding. I think he's so versatile. You know, a character like Barnabas Collins, that's why they were able to do so much with him, is that he's so versatile. Someone who's, in a way, immortal, and right? Like Barnabas never really dies at any time in the show. We don't know what happens to him. His father can't kill him, so they lock him up. You know, he just doesn't die. So he's very versatile in that way. You can write him into anything, and you have too. In your own writings, you've been able to write him and weave him into your storylines in really any kind of capacity. And I've done the same way. I've done the same thing. So that's what's really cool about that character, or any character like him, is that you can create an entire world around him or them based on the fact that they're that kind of versatile. You know, they can live in any world because they're undead. So that's really what's cool about him. And you're right, he's out there somewhere.
Is there anything you want to add before we get going?
I mean, aside from thank you for having me, I always have fun talking to you. It's just such a fun conversation to have. And an hour flies by like crazy. An hour and a half. It barely feels like 20 minutes.
I know. It's like, wait, how long have we been on here? I don't know. Then I look at my timer. I want to thank you so much for coming on and doing this with me and jumping on here and doing this video with me. It's been loads of fun. I enjoy having you, Mark. I love having guests on, especially talking Dark Shadows. Thank you so much, John, for joining me, man. A link to John's blog will be in the description box. You can get him at Return Shadows, at Poprag. You can get him on Facebook, John Phillip Bettencourt. Check out one of the best, if not the best blog writer out there. Go check him out.
Thank you.
Hey, man, you have a good night and have a good one.
You too. Thanks, Joel.
Yep,
Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye.